I mean,
basically.
I've left no tips before. It's because like I had just enough money to get my food.
Yeah.
So I'm out of there.
Leave my change, baby.
I always leave over $3 if you're a good waitress. But my bill is usually like $6.
See, I don't go by like how long I wait for my food, 'cause that's not them. You know?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah, they're good.
Or you don't see kids menu.
When you leave a tip, the cooks get part of it.
Good. I didn't even know.
So do the busboys. It all gets split
Not
up.
everywhere though.
That's what it is most places.
Well,
When I worked at
Applebee's,
Frisch's and I was a busboy, I never got like it went straight to the waiter or waitress.
Applebee's are only
I won't comment on that.
bartenders.
Well,
What?
they told me at Roadhouse that they all turned
Saying
it
I was a
in.
bad busboy?
No, I'm saying your waitresses were
Why?
putting it to you.
No, that's how all of them were. Like that's how they said it was.
That's not the way it is.
I don't know them.
Ask your next waitress or waiter.
At
They'll tell you.
I didn't
McAllister's,
know it was like that.
we like have.
We're in like a 1999 movie about high school.
Does anybody know, is there a difference in the state taxes, Indiana and Ohio?
Yeah.
How about Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky?
Indiana 7%.
Now that's sales tax.
Oh, never mind. They're the same. I thought it was still 7% for state.
Sales tax and state tax, two different things.
I know, but isn't it still 7% though?
Oh, you mean both sales taxes?
I thought it would.
Might be, I don't remember. Ohio, because Ohio changed it a few years ago, then they changed it again, and they went way up to like 8. Then everybody threw a big fit, so they went back down. And then once everything calmed down, they jacked it back up a little bit, I think. So, I don't know. I don't get involved as much as I probably should in that stuff, because it affects me, but I figure, you know what? 100 years from now, I'm going to be dead, ain't nobody going to care. I just live my life and go on. So nobody knows state taxes?
7%.
That's, again, that's sales tax.
What?
So if you buy something, they charge you that much, and we'll talk about sales tax somewhere throughout the year. But for your state tax, so this is the amount of tax that they take out of your check to pay for the state government. Alright?
So we're looking for those.
I feel like it's like $26.
No, the government's working for you, supposedly, because you're paying them. But that's not the way it works.
Is it a lot of money that you're paying?
I don't know, is it a lot of money? Is state tax a lot?
Oh yeah. Well,
Does anybody still have that? I gave you that pay stub. Does anybody still have it?
Isn't it like almost.
Look at it. See if you can find the state tax on there.
How's that? Like the federal tax?
The federal tax is federal tax.
Oh, how's that?
So let's do.
1,571.
Where did she?
Now that's probably it says that's Ohio tax.
State exemptions.
No, that's how.
Ohio taxes is like 44.43.
That sounds better.
Wow.
State exemptions are.
Oh.
That's what that person is allowed to not pay taxes on.
Okay.
So what'd you say the taxes were? So watch. let's see if we can figure this out. For that, and try not to lose that thing because we'll use it every now and then. What'd you say it was?
I said like, it's 43, 44,
44, 43. So that's my state tax. That's my state tax. Or that's this person's state tax. What was their gross income?
The gross amount or just the gross?
Which one do we use? Adjusted gross or the actual gross? You use the adjusted.
1,816 and 94 cents.
1,894 cents. Somebody do me a favor so that we can figure this out because apparently nobody knows it. Divide those two. .0 what?
24.
Change that to a percent.
24.
So apparently, if that check stub, I couldn't think of, if that check stub is correct, that person works in Ohio, their state tax is about how much? 2.4%. So the state of Ohio takes about 2.4% of your pay, and that's probably fairly close. That's what most states. Most states are 2 to 3%.
I pay both. Indiana and Ohio, so I'm just paying an extra tax for no reason. Just because I live in that state.
Now, because usually Indiana and Ohio have a reciprocating agreement. What can happen there is if you file your taxes correctly, you can get all of that money from Indiana sent to Ohio, and then if you overpaid in Ohio, they'll pay you back anything over. So you might not get it all back because, especially for you guys, you probably don't pay in enough anyway. A lot of times you're not allowed to take any exemptions or anything, so you don't pay in as much as they want you to pay in, but you get out of paying anything because you make not enough to get over the bar. So we'll see here in a couple minutes if that's about what Ohio is. We'll look at Ohio. Compute state sales taxes, exemptions or withholdings. Withholding allowances, that's what we did last time. Same idea. How many exemptions do I have? When I do my state taxes, I have 5 exemptions. All right, because I have 3 kids, my wife and me. So I get 5 exemptions. When you guys do yours, and again, we talked about this last time, when you do yours, you may have 1, but I think Sydney's the one that said last time, her and her dad might have to have it out because she's probably going to have 0. Because dad's probably going to say, no, I'm claiming you and you're not allowed to claim yourself. So that's what that is. Now, with these state taxes, nothing really hard about state taxes. Federal tax is a little harder to figure out. That's why we're having all this argument in Congress and everything right now, you know, saying that why do these taxes have to be so difficult for everybody to understand? State tax is a little easier to understand. It's usually a lot of the states are pretty straightforward. They say 3%, a flat rate, and that's it. Now some states aren't that way. Some states have it graduated where the more you make, the more they take. The more you make, the more they take. And we'll figure out if Ohio is one of those states or not. And we'll talk about some other states that do things completely different than all that. And if you know anything about professional sports, you might know something about those other states. You might want to write these down. Your taxable wages. Your taxable wages, annual gross pay minus exemptions. Sort of the same thing as last time, right? You take your gross pay, subtract off your exemptions. What's annual mean again? Yearly. So usually state goes by yearly. This is how much you should pay per year. They try to just cut it off. You know, this is, you make this much, you make $20,000, we're going to take this much of it. Your state income tax is your taxable wages, whatever you get by doing this first thing here. Take that taxable wages times the tax rate of your certain state. And again, a lot of states will just have one tax rate, 3%, 2%, 2.5%, 8%. Other states have graduated.
Is it Maine? I think Maine's like the highest or something. I know. It's like 13% or something crazy.
Know what the lowest is? Know what the lowest is?
Texas.
Texas. That's the correct answer.
Is it really?
You know why?
Oil and everything.
Find out here.
It's gone now.
Yeah, doesn't like a last year something get like a certain amount of money at
It
the end of
depends
the year
on the
because like
population.
I feel like there's a lot of Congress.
pretty sure.
So, you take taxable wages, annual gross pay minus exemptions, however many exemptions you have, and usually you'll get, like, I think on the check stub, what'd it say? Did it say 1,500 at the bottom or something?
What?
I don't know, I thought somebody said state exemptions.
Yes.
What'd it say?
Well, it's $1,571.80.
So that means that person, for whatever reason, got that much. So maybe it's like each exemption is $520 or something. It's not a normal like $2,000 like the federal tax was. It's some crazy number for each state usually. Then you take the taxable wages times the tax rate, whatever it is for that certain state. Here's what you wanted to see. I'm gonna flip these lights off real quick so we can see this a little better. So look at that chart for a second.
California 150. Maybe it was California.
Florida is 100.
Hawaii's 1.4 to 11. South Carolina is 0 to 7. Where are they paying 0%?
Washington.
Can't see Wyoming down there.
Nevada, no income tax.
I don't know if I
Yeah,
can.
so Alaska has no income tax.
I-
That because like
Nevada, no tax.
I don't know if I can move that up or not to, so we can see Wyoming.
South Dakota's not many. Alaska might not.
Idaho barely has that.
That's a while ago. States like Idaho. Ohio's slim.
Nevada.
Some states have no income tax. What I started to say about professional athletes. Does anybody know where LeBron James lives at? Florida. Any idea why?
There's no income.
There's no income tax. So he keeps his residence in Florida because there is no income tax. No other reason, or no state income tax.
So he has to keep like all of these.
So he gets to keep a higher percentage. You'll hear a lot about professional athletes or big business owners. And you'll find out where they're from, and they'll say they're either from Texas, Florida, Wyoming, what other ones? Nevada, Washington. They'll be from one of those states because they don't have to pay the state income tax. So if they own a big business or they make a lot of money in a year, that's less money that they have to pay in for those things.
But you probably have to pay more than that.
Maybe, I don't know. So what do you mean you have to pay more to live there? Somebody come around to your
I
house?
know, like, cost of things, like I know in Alaska, like, the state has no income tax, but like, a gallon of milk's like $10.
Alright, so in Alaska, it's more expensive to live there, and that's probably why they don't have a state income tax.
But then they get a bunch of money at the end of the year. If you actually live there, you get a bunch of money at the end of the year from the world.
Right, so
Cause like you're allowed it, right, something like that. But I
how
think
does
it's
that,
money.
so let's go to Florida.
I wanna move there.
Is it
I
real,
know,
real
I don't wanna
expensive
go
in
anywhere
Florida
near
to live there?
Yeah, it's not expensive at all. It's the worst. I mean, it kinda is, but
It's-
then I love the beach.
Florida's not bad.
Always have-
Let's go to California. California's almost as bad as Alaska as far as living there.
Yeah, because you have like.
And look at theirs, 13 point, it goes up to 13.3.
Yeah, because they know that there's a lot of people that have money there.
I'm trying to move from
Is
the.
that what it is?
It's also
Because they
very
moved there,
popular.
because they moved
It's
there
very
for the
populated.
heat,
The cold.
and because then like
I hate it. I hate it.
What might be another reason that Florida doesn't have a state tax?
Just the hurricane risk a little bit.
Maybe, but that's probably not
Because
it.
you live there at your own risk.
Who goes there? Who goes to Florida?
Rich
people,
Tourists.
Old people, retirement.
Rich.
Alright, so maybe not necessarily rich people, but people who are retired go there.
it's kinda
Well,
weird.
so that with Florida, their sales tax, I believe their sales tax is a lot higher than ours. It's like, I don't even wanna say, cause I can't remember for sure, but their sales tax is a lot higher. So that they can collect that money instead of taking income tax.
So that'd be the same like Alaska then?
Alright, and
Like their sales tax might be.
Alaska, their taxes, or their sales tax and stuff, a lot higher probably, because their goods cost a lot more, so everything is jacked up, so they make the money back that way. Let's look at Ohio. What did we say the Ohio tax was?
2.5.
2.4. Does that look like what it is there?
For the average person, probably.
Yeah,
Like
somewhere
minimum
about,
wage.
somewhere right in between there, right?
So I've-
If we look at Tennessee, what do you notice about Tennessee? 6%.
Same at Colorado, it's 4.6.
It's a flat rate.
So I have a question.
You make $20,000, they take 6% of it. You make $10,000, they take 6% of it. You make $5,000, they take 6% of it. Before, we were looking at Ohio, they don't take just a flat rate. So what do?
Based on what you make.
Right, the more you make, the higher up this chart you go. Right, so at $2,000, they only take this much. $3,000, they take a little more. $4,000, they take a little more. So on, so on, so on. Up to 5.33. If you made $1 billion, they're saying, well, we won't take any more than 5.3% of your overall. What's your
So
question?
like how much, okay, I'm sure you might not know this. Okay, so like how much do you have to, okay, so say if you're living in Minnesota, how theirs is all the way at like 9.885. How much do you have to make to have to do that? But then way down here in South Carolina, it's like 0. So you, well, how, like, you have to make what, like $5,000 in South Carolina to be 0 or something? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. There's gonna be each state's gonna have their own setup, but probably a lot of them, like this 0.53 and that 0 and that 1.5 and that 2 and that 1. These lower ends are probably sort of around the same range of number, but you still got to remember again. If you go to, if we're looking at some of these places, if you go to Kentucky, and a lot of you ought to know this just for the simple fact that you might have relatives in Kentucky. You go to Kentucky, the pay there is lower than in a lot of other states. So people in Kentucky don't make near as much maybe as people in Ohio because there's more factories and
So
stuff.
say
in
you're
Ohio.
making like, let's say you're making like $70,000 a year. Okay. So like, where would you be at? Like in any of them, like say in Ohio, like would you be like right in the middle, or like?
Well,
would
we'd
you
have
be
to
lower?
we'd have to see their tax set up to know that, because making $70,000 in Ohio is going to be a whole lot different than making $70,000 in California. $70,000 in California might be way down here at the 1%, because in California the price of living is quite a bit higher than Ohio.
Yeah.
So $70,000 isn't necessarily a whole lot. In Ohio, $70,000 might be a pretty good living. If you go to Alaska, you know, $70,000 probably isn't hardly anything at all, because everything costs so much. So you got states like Alaska, California, New York. $70,000 isn't a whole lot. Had a friend who, for a while, lived in New York or New Jersey, lived right there on the border or something, and he had a little apartment. I don't even want to say it was a one bedroom. It was one room apartment with
Everything
kitchen.
in the studio.
Yeah, and he was paying like I can't remember what it was, $3,000 a month in rent for that. All right, a one room place like that around here might cost you $300.
$200.
All right, so big difference between New York and Ohio. He was happy to be paying $3,000.
But that's like good.
Yeah.
How much
So-
did he must have been making?
So, you know, when he was living there,
If you're paying
he was probably making a whole lot more money than when he was living in
Yeah, if you're
Ohio.
If you're spending $3,000 on rent a month in Ohio, you have like a beautiful house. 14-car garage.
All right, you might want to write down this chart here, because we're going to use that chart.
You write down the word.
The example you don't have to write down, but we're going to look at this, try to figure it out. John lives in Utah, and his wife, and has a wife and 2 children. He has four exemptions, so he's counting his 2 children, his wife, and him. Utah uses the chart below for exemptions. John's gross annual salary last year was $44,750. How much should he have paid in state tax for the year? So if we're looking at this, if he's got 4 exemptions, how much is he gonna, if he's married, he gets how much? 4,000. On top of that, because that's him and his wife, on top of that, he gets another 2,000 for each of his children. So how much in total exemptions is he going to have? How much total money? You got 4,000 for him and his wife, 2,000 for one kid, 2,000 for another kid. How much total is he going to have in exemptions? $8,000. So he's going to have $8,000 in exemptions. Now what we do with that $8,000 is we subtract it from his pay. So somebody can get their calculator out and help me out. $44,750 was his pay. He had $8,000 worth of exemptions.
36,750.
That's his taxable money. For the state, that's how much they're going to tax him on. All right? Now, how do we know what percentage? Did they tell us? They didn't tell us, did they? How could we maybe know? Because otherwise we can't answer this question. What state do you live in? Let's go back. Maybe somebody will pay some attention.
Utah.
He lived in Utah. He lived in Utah.
5%.
It's a flat 5%, isn't it?
So you put
So this is his taxable amount. What do we do? Times it by
0.5.
0.05. Don't forget, bump it over 2 places. Somebody do that.
It's 18,375.
Boy, that sure don't sound right.
You said time, right?
1,837.5.
1,800 what?
37.5.
Oh my bad.
We want that in money, so what is it?
Read that wrong.
50.
50.
How do I know what Dalton said didn't sound right? Because if he was paying $18,000 in state tax, they're taking a whole bunch of his money, right?
Yeah.
So it make more sense that he paid a little less than $2,000 to the state. And he made 40-some thousand dollars, gave $2,000 to the state. That's still a little high, I would think. Because if we look at the Ohio person that we had the check stuff for there, and they were paying 2.5, that seems a little more reasonable. But since it's a flat tax rate, that's the way it is. So people in Utah that pay that flat tax rate, the people who make very little money, still got to pay that 6%. So when everybody says, oh, we need a flat tax rate, that's the way it ought to be, it ought to just be this. If you get that flat tax rate and Joe Blow is paying 6% and God is paying 6% and he makes a whole lot more money, well, Joe Blow down here sort of, right, he's struggling because that $2,000 to him means a whole lot more than maybe the $20,000 to the guy who's making $1 million. So flat tax rates seem okay, but it's not a cure-all or answer to everybody's problems. Josephine is married and has no children and does not claim her dog or any other big animals. I'll put that on there for you guys because last time you said something stupid. She earned $52,600 this year and paid state tax of $2,430. Her state uses the chart below. What is her state tax rate? This time we're figuring it backwards. All right, so this time we're actually trying to figure out what the tax rate is. Maybe we'll even go back and try to figure out maybe what state she lives in. So she's got $52,600. How many exemptions is she going to have? How much in exemptions is she going to have?
Just 4,000.
4,000 because she's married, right?
Wow.
No sugar.
So we do 52,600. What do we do with the exemptions? Subtract them. Somebody do that. What's 52,600 minus the 4,000?
48,600.
48,600. That's the amount that she's going to pay taxes on, or the amount that she did pay taxes on. To go backwards, instead of multiplying this times the rate, what we do is we divide. We take the amount that she paid in taxes, which was $2,430, and we divide that by her total taxable wage, $48,600. Somebody divide that for me. 0.05, exactly that. Now we're going to change that to a percent. What's that tell us? 5%. So her state had a 5% tax. Now does that mean it's a flat tax? We're not sure. Maybe she just happened to fall right at that point. But we know that her state had a tax rate of 5%. So either it was 5% all the time, or it could have fell from one range to another. If we go back, to this, tell me a state she could not have lived in.
Florida.
Florida, why not?
No tax.
They don't have any tax. Give me another state.
Washington.
Washington, they don't have no tax. Give me something else besides the ones with no tax that she could not have lived in.
Colorado.
Colorado, how come
Tennessee.
Colorado?
Because it only goes to one.
4.6, and she paid 5, so something, she couldn't have lived there, right? Give me another. Tennessee, somebody said
Illinois.
6%, right? Illinois, what's Illinois? 3.75, she couldn't have lived there. Give me a state she could have lived in.
Virginia.
Virginia, let's see, where's Virginia?
Right there,
2 to 5.75, all right? Now, how much money did she make? What was her total gross?
Like 40.
It was like 40 or 50,000, right? Does 40 or 50,000 dollars seem like a lot of money?
No.
Even no matter what state you're living in, is that going to make you like one of the richest people there? Probably not. So could we sort of wheedle down the state that she lived in according to that? Because if I look at Virginia, if she paid 5%, in Virginia, would that put her at the bottom, in the middle, or at the top of the people? That'd put her towards the top. Do you think she was one of the top earners in Virginia?
No.
Probably not. So could we maybe get another state where it might have been more likely that she lived?
Georgia.
Georgia, what's Georgia?
Well, you're saying 6%.
Where did that came from?
Wait, that ain't, no, never mind, because there's probably a top.
Where is Georgia?
It's.
Oh, over there. 1 to 6, that'd still put her at the top, sort of, wouldn't it?
Maybe Iowa.
Iowa. Let's see, what's Iowa?
36 to 8.98.
That'd put her sort of in the middle, right? Maybe a little higher to the top, so maybe Iowa.
The District of Columbia.
District of Columbia, what's that?
4% to 8.
That would put her bottom to middle, wouldn't it?
What about Maine?
So that might be
Oh, wait, no, Maine's not, never mind.
Utah,
The top rate.
Should be at the top or should be at the top.
this one,
Yeah.
California, 1% to 13%. That put her down towards a little less than middle, right? So maybe California, that'd be a good guess. Again, would a good guess be Rhode Island? Probably not, because that put her way up close to the top, and at $40,000 or $50,000, you're probably not one of the top earners in that state. So some of these things, you got to be able to, sort of think things through and understand what's going on, understand if something makes sense or not. Right? Graduated income tax. A graduated income tax is a system that increases the tax rate at different levels of income. Ohio has a what? Graduated income tax. The more money you make, the higher percentage you're going to pay. And if you go look it up, if you go to like the State of Ohio website, that they would have, like Dalton was asking, well, how do you know if you're in here or there? They would have that on there, all right? They have the tables on there saying, if you earn from this to this, you pay this. If you earn from this to this, you pay this percent. If you earn from this to this, you pay this percent. So they have those tax tables on the Ohio's website, I think. So if you went there and looked, you should be able to find something about that. So it's called a graduated income tax. The more you make, the higher percentage you're going to pay. Now, again, some states might be set up a little different. Some states will have something like the commission was, where you pay 2% on the first 5,000. You pay 6% on the next 5,000. You pay 8% on the next 5,000. They may have something like that, like the commission was, all right? Other states may have something where it's completely different than that. You're not, where they go by the whole year. So if you make $10,000, you pay this percentage for the whole year. If you make $40,000, you pay this percentage. So they may have it split up a little different instead of going up in steps.
So like you're not pay the same percentage every year.
Right. And that's, if, it's not as, you don't hear it as much now, but it used to be, you might have heard your grandparents or somebody say, that moved me up a tax bracket.
Yeah.
And when they say that moved them up a tax bracket, so there was, from here to here, you had to pay a certain percentage. Well, if you got over this line, then you had to move up to that next tax bracket and you paid a little higher percentage. So figuring out state graduated tax per pay, given your annual tax withheld, this is what it is. If we're doing annually, if we're doing the whole year, all as one thing. Tax withheld per pay period equals your annual tax divided by the number of pays per year. When we talk about number of pays per year, you got to remember the bi-weekly, the bi-monthly, the semi-monthly. You got to remember all that stuff that we learned in chapter 1.
We have the pin on.
What's the homework page 129?
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to, the dot line, it disappears.
I mean, it don't disappear, but it just
Yeah,
goes
it gets smaller. The first one disappeared. And it was, I was wondering, because I'm just pushing the pin out here and all of a sudden it disappeared on it. So, now I got it all messed up. And we'll skip that. But just looking at this just real quick, notice here, first $1,000, 1.5%. Next $2,000, 3%, so on and so on. Got your exemptions and stuff on there. That's your assignment. It's on 2 separate pages. It's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 problems off of that page. And then some off of page 133.